webcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everybody and welcome to the first GALA webinar of the year. My name is Manuela Noske and I'm the Communications Manager here at GALA. GALA is a global non-profit trade association supporting the language industry. We are headquartered in Seattle, Washington in the United States. And today we're going to have a presentation by Viveta Jean from Intertranslations in Athens, Greece. And we're so pleased each of you joined us from various locations all around the world to participate in this event. I will hand it over to Viveta in just one moment, but first I have a few housekeeping items to go over. We have muted everyone's lines to cut down on any background noise. If you have experienced any technical difficulties, you can let me know by using your chat box, and I will work with you to troubleshoot them. If you have a slow internet connection, your audio may be disrupted. If that happens, you can use the number listed on the GoToWebinar panel to call in using your own phone. We are making a recording of this presentation, and you will be able to find it following the presentation on GALA's global website. All participants will receive a link. Viveta will answer your questions at the end of the presentation, but please feel free to type them into your chat box throughout the webinar to get them into the queue. We will get to as many questions as we can with the time remaining at the end of the presentation. Before we begin, I'd like to take just a few moments to introduce Viveta. Viveta Jean is Translation and Localization Industry Specialist at Intertranslations. With more than 15 years of experience as a linguist and vendor manager, she recently decided to combine her expertise and know-how to become a language solution specialist. She has an MA in Translation and New Technologies from the Department of Foreign Languages and Interpreting at the Ionian University. Her main focus is to promote new trends and developments in the industry, namely where translation skills meet MT technology. MT tools and post-editing techniques are amongst her key fields of interest. So now, without any further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Viveta for the remainder of the session. Viveta, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Manuela. It is a big pleasure to speak to you today. So having experience as a translator, project manager, vendor manager, and language solution specialist, I will attempt to present the post-editing topic from all perspectives. In this presentation, I will try to cover the transition from translation to post-editing, from statistical machine translation to neural machine translation, and from translator to post-editor role, based on our own research, other MLVs published research results, and academic scientific publications. So, instead of starting with the expected question of what is post-editing, I will share with you our company's experience in research in the field. Intertranslations is a company founded in 1996, operating on local and international level. Our industries are EU, law, pharmaceuticals, automotive, consumer electronics, IT, and marketing. Our customers include the European Commission, the Translation Center for the Bodies, the Court of Justice, Pfizer, Honda, Samsung, and Sephora, just indicatively. We work with all CAT tools and have post-edited more than 15 million words starting from 2011 from and into many other language combinations. Of course, our transition from translation to post-editing did not happen overnight. To the contrary, I would say that it was the result of progressive steps and thorough research. So let's talk first about research in our research in MT and post-editing. It actually included two phases. The first phase was launched in 2011 and implemented the translation memory and machine translation model. This was a testing phase using raw machine translation in combination with a general translation memory. The second phase, from 2012 to 2013, we can say that it systemized the work of the first testing phase. It implemented trained machine translation in combination with domain-specific TMs. The testing period and research focused on various domains from English to Greek, English to Swedish, English to Dutch, and English to Portuguese. Then, back in 2015, as a result of our activity in the field of post-editing, we cooperated with TAUS, and we prepared a post-editing course for Greek based on our research. The course included work on a bilingual corpora, English to Greek, of 5,000 words in the domain of EU affairs. It involves classification of errors, examples for each error category, and a light and full post-editing exercise. So here are our statistics. Based on this progressive research, as you may see, the productivity was increased by 40% per hour, meaning from 2,500 to 4,000 words. The time was reduced by 40%, meaning 4 to 5 hours per day, instead of 8 for the translation of 2,500 words. And here we see a differentiation of performance depending on language combination and domain, typology of text, and the machine translation system and its training. Just a note here, this research was based on a statistical machine translation system. The important thing is that it allowed us to linearly conceive the evolution from a statistical machine translation to a neural machine translation system from a post-editor's perspective, to train our linguists in the post-editing role and the post-editing techniques, and to use our post-editor's feedback for future research in the evaluation of MT errors and post-editing output. So moving to the next slide, you can check the preliminary findings of this research. It seems that combining machine translation post-editing with translation memory editing and unassisted translation delivers some important results in terms of the behavior of linguists. Linguists demonstrated higher productivity during post-editing of machine translation compared to editing fuzzy matches coming from the translation memory. They left more errors in translation memory segments compared to machine translation segments. Linguist experience is correlated with the processing speed, and the CAT tool's interface is more challenging than the post-editing process itself. I characteristically remember that when we were recruiting linguists to be assimilated in the post-editing process, it was more difficult to convince and train linguists in using a variety of CAT tools than training the post-editing process. And one step further, post-editing techniques are better implemented when the post-editing is performed in a text document than in the CAT tool interface. To put it in simple words, this means that a post-editor would more efficiently work in terms of quality in a doc file using track changes than on the screen of a CAT tool. To give you a hint, the ideal CAT tool for me should have a source editable image of the original document and a mirror image of the target, taking into account all contextual and extra-contextual information on a micro-context and macro-context level. The sentences would still be saved as segments without formatting in the CAT tool, but the view of the document with all physical formatting and images would appear. And improve the quality and increase the productivity of the post-editor. So let's check the benefits and challenges of post-editing. The benefits of post-editing are obvious and already known in the industry. Cost reduction, higher productivity, improved quality, and overweighting the limitations of other CAT tools. But along with the benefits, some new challenges are raised to be resolved. The post-editing rules and instructions are subjective and not global. The post-editing metrics are still to be investigated and correlated from the perspective of the different types of effort involved. The post-editor skills and recruitment criteria are still to be defined. And last, the post-editor's payment is not standard. The post-editor's payment still constitutes a gray area, and many factors should be considered here, such as the effort. This is a concept I'm going to analyze further in the next slides, and of course the evaluation of the pre-translated machine translation output. So these benefits and challenges, we can say that they mark the transition from the translation to the post-editing era, which is the topic of this presentation. So let's see what is currently post-editing. I chose two definitions. The first one, the correction of texts that have been translated from a source language into a target language by a machine translation system. And the second one, the minimal edits required to transform hypothesis into a fluent sentence with the same meaning as the source sentence. The first one focuses on the description of the service back in 2001. The second one is a more technical definition, introducing the factor of quantity of edits, meaning the technical effort, and the factor of transformation into a fluent sentence, meaning the cognitive effort. Post-editing entails tidying up the raw output, correcting mistakes, revising entirely, and retranslating entire sections. Well, post-editing is a new service, but also a new skill, and as such, it is acquired with experience and differentiated from translation and revision. Now, the important benefit of post-editing is the increase of productivity. Post-editing productivity increases mainly with experience with the post-editing task, expertise in the domain, familiarity with the language pair, knowledge of the specific MT system, which means the kind and frequency of errors that machine translation system produces. Let's move then to the next slide and check in detail the MT behavior by error categories. As post-editing machine translation is different from reviewing a human translation, the post-editor must be aware of the kind and frequency of errors of the MT system. This can be grouped in the following categories: wrong use of key terminology, figurative language, an idiomatic use of target language, formal versus informal style, too long sentences. These are the sentences that are too long, exceeding the source sentences in terms of length. Single word errors, errors of relation, structural informational errors, incorrect verb forms, tense, consistent translation of a word in one manner in spite of context, grammar and syntax errors, such as incorrect concordance of number, gender, definite articles, and word order, punctuation errors, like missing accents, incorrect capitalization, unlocalized numerical punctuation, omissions, additions, including omission of placeholder words, such as that, which, who, or whom in English, compound words translated as individual words. As an example, a compound noun may be translated directly as three individual terms rather than one single compound word. And machine neologisms. Machine translation may produce neologisms in the target language which initially look like comprehensible compound words, yet they cannot be found in the dictionaries. So, the basic question is, what is the difference between translation and post-editing? And one step further, how can the post-editor profile be defined? Is post-editor a translator or a reviewer? Post-editing differs from the revision of a human translation output on several fronts. First of all, the type of errors to be corrected are different. Second, the misconstruction of meaning will occur at different levels. And last, the post-editing seeks the minimum steps required for an acceptable task. In order to decide on whether to translate or post-edit, the following parameters should be considered. What is the type of text? What is the machine translation system? Is it a general, a client-specific, a vertical? For those of you who are not familiarized with these terms, I will explain in the next slides. And finally, what is the purpose of the text? Publishable or non-publishable quality? In the next slide, we will check the post-editing process. To be more specific, the post-editor's job includes the following common operations: fixing punctuation and capitalization, changing sentence and phrase structures, editing grammatical agreements, for example, singular, plural, masculine, feminine, adding, deleting punctuation symbols, changing formatting, removing, adding words, and retranslating whole words or expressions. And here, in this slide, you may see a list of the common errors committed by the post-editors. While post-editing, linguists may commit the following common errors which constitute the main challenge. Let's take them one by one. Stylistic preferential changes that do not change the meaning. Under-edited translations, resulting in major errors and not natural flow in the final translation. Typos, duplicate words, trailing spaces, double spaces, tags, missing spaces should be checked. Over-edited translations. Post-editors should make the most out of the machine translation output without making stylistic preferential changes. Inconsistent terms. The machine translation engine does not necessarily produce consistent terms. Untranslated, added, or omitted words. This is the case of the lexical gaps. When a word is not a part of the MT engine corpus or is too complex and may be deleted, substituted by a term that makes no sense, or left untranslated. Unlocalized acronyms. If the machine translation engine corpus does not contain a given acronym, it will leave it unlocalized. Unlocalized text. The machine translation engine is not able to localize units of measurement. For example, currency, punctuation marks, addresses, phone numbers, zip codes, shortcut keys, or cultural references. Typos. This is the case of typos not being caught by the automatic spell check. Ignorance of false cognates or wrong translation of terms which look correct while being wrong. Errors on the structural level, meaning syntactic errors. And machine translation is. As explained previously, this is the case of the machine-created neologisms. In this case, the post-editor may accept the machine neologism as an existing word due to lack of experience. Here I have the example of some of our direct customers who send us an empty output to be used as a source text. For example, the customer translates the document from English to Greek by an empty system. Then they proceed with a basic internal edit and they ask us to translate it into French. Our post-editors identify words not existing in Greek that can only be understood when they're back translated by the machine translation in English. As an observation, this tends to create a new language that may be thought to be machine translation is. I think that we will soon hear the expression, it seems machine translation is to me, in the near future. In this slide, we will see what are the instructions for use for post-editing. In order to avoid these common errors, there is a specific need to set the rules of the game and invent the instructions for use. Especially when during post-editor's training, the basic question is, how do I post-edit? When do I translate from scratch? And when do I correct? For post-editing in general, some basic rules can be set in order to help post-editors balance the technical, temporal, and cognitive effort to increase their productivity. Some basic rules are: do correct all translations in terms of grammar, syntax, semantics, and punctuation. Ensure that no content has been omitted or added. Ensure all tags have been correctly inserted. And retain as much machine translation output as possible. The don't include: don't hesitate too long over a problem, don't worry if style is repetitive, and don't make preferential changes. The post-editor should use machine translation suggestions if a large piece of the sentence is correct, the raw empty quality is very good with only minor corrections needed, the raw empty quality is not so good but would still be faster to correct it than to translate it from scratch, and the MT has the correct meaning and is completely understandable. Post-editors shouldn't use machine translation suggestions if the raw machine translation doesn't make any sense and it would take longer to correct it than translate from scratch. They need more than a few seconds to understand it, and there are errors that would require rearranging most of the text. The objective is to finalize the translation, not to recreate it. The need of defining the rules of post-editing for post-editors comes to match the needs of the industry, meaning the needs of our customers. In this slide, we will check the different existing types of post-editing. Based on the scenarios of use, two types of post-editing are currently available, light and full. The scenarios of use are either post-editing for a translation company, for a web platform, or a final customer who use their own system of automated translation, or the linguist decides on his or her own initiative to process the text to be translated through a machine translation system and post-edit the output. Light post-editing turns raw machine translation output into understandable text. The editor corrects obvious errors such as mistranslations, terminology mistakes, and untranslated sentences with a productivity of up to 20,000 words per day. Full post-editing can generate human quality output in terms of style, syntax, grammar, fluency, and terminology. Light or full depends on the client, the language combination, and the project. And it is the final recipient who is responsible to set up the standards or accept the standards offered describing light and full post-editing. Here you see an example of light and full post-editing from French to English. In the light post-edit example, only minimum edits have been performed for informative purposes. In the full post-edit example, the maximum edits have been performed to achieve the human quality result. In this picture, from Common Sense Advisory, you may see the journey from machine translation output to human quality. The journey starts from machine translation output, continues with processing basic levels of lexical errors and syntax errors during light post-editing, and advances with processing higher levels of less obvious errors, style, and fluency during full post-editing to reach the destination of the human quality result. Let's check this table then, presenting error categories, specific issues, and expectations from light post-editing and full post-editing. As you see, the checkmark symbol means that the listed issue is dealt with by a light or full post-editing process. The no-go mark indicates that it's not included in that type of edit, and the asterisk specifies that it may be included if failing to fix it would affect the meaning. Based on this table, we can understand that full post-editing does not contain any gray areas in terms of correction. Everything should be corrected in order to reach the human quality output. To the contrary, for light post-editing, there are only specific types of errors to be corrected, and depending on the case, the corrections may be compulsory or mandatory. This means that the post-editor has the risk to over-post-edit or under-post-edit while light post-editing, since there are no specific borders. In this slide, I will describe to you our experience. A recent example of a post-editing project that our company undertook was the 1 million words light post-editing project from English to German in 1 month in the automotive field. For this project, neural machine translation was used in combination with a customized cut tool. Still, the benefits are known: shorter production times, improved quality and consistency, and lower translation costs. The challenges encountered were not associated to the time or productivity constraint as one may think. The bigger challenge was to pre-evaluate a sample of pre-translated text and estimate the post-editing effort, taking into account the time the linguists would need to familiarize themselves with the cut tool. In addition to productivity pre-assessment, budgeting for the project's cost was another challenge arising. The customer provided us with specific guidelines for the light post-editing task. However, There were still gray areas to be enlightened in terms of corrections, since instructions related to quantity or quality of corrections were more subjective, non-related to absolute numbers or standardized concepts. The project was efficiently completed, fulfilling its scope, which was actually the creation of understandable content, possibly for further internal editing by the team of the end customer, with a significant reduction compared to the rates of the conventional translation service. Now, let's talk about the transition from statistical machine translation to neural machine translation. In addition to the transition from translation to post-editing era, post-editing faced the transition itself in terms of the machine translation systems used. It is the transition from statistical machine translation to neural machine translation. When we talk about SMT, we talk about phrase-based systems. Statistical machine translation uses predictive algorithms to teach a computer how to translate text. These models are created or learned from parallel bilingual text corpora and used to create the most probable output based on different bilingual examples. Statistical systems can be distinguished in general systems based on corpora composed of text that are available on the web, specialized client-specific systems based on corpora that belong to one specific customer, and verticals, meaning systems based on corpora that are made up from text of various customers in one specific field, for example, automotive. NMT is based on the model of neural networks in the human brain, with information being sent to different layers to be processed before output. It uses deep learning techniques to teach itself to translate text based on existing statistical models. It makes for faster translations than the statistical method and has the ability to produce higher quality output. The method of analytic error annotation is used for the classification of errors and the creation of error profiles. Error can be morphological, reordering, and lexical choice errors. In this table, we can see some published quality statistics regarding the quality level of phrase-based and neural machine translation systems compared to human translation from English to Spanish, French, Chinese, and vice versa. It is clearly shown that neural machine translation supersedes in quality the phrase-based machine translation. But should the question be if SMT is better than NMT? And if compared, what are the strong and weak points of each one? Let's see now the weak and strong points of SMT and NMT based on the following fact. During IWSLT 2015 shared task, NMT outperformed SMT systems on English-German pairs for the translation of TED Talks transcripts. The output of 4 state-of-the-art MT systems that participated in the English to German task of the IWSLT 2015 was evaluated. The selected runs were produced by 3 phrase-based MT systems and a neural MT system. The analysis leveraged high-quality post-edits of the MT outputs, which allowed to profile systems with respect to reliable measures of post-editing effort and translation error types. The outcomes of the analysis confirm that NMT has significantly pushed ahead the state-of-the-art, especially in a language pair involving rich morphology prediction and significant word reordering. Based on this fact and latest research, I tried to approach the basic characteristics differentiating the two systems. First of all, amount of corpora. SMT engine does not need great amount of corpora to become fluent, while NMT engine needs great corpora and training data. The learning pattern. SMT systems reproduce, reorder known phrases, while NMT systems seem to learn aspects of the language. Reordering. SMT proves to misplace words. NMT systems learn complex relationships between languages, revealing word reordering as a very strong aspect compared to phrase-based machine translation. The translation edit rate. SMT outperforms NMT for sentences more than 60 words. NMT has a better translation edit rate, but proves to have more degradation for sentences over 35 words. So NMT gives too short output for sentences more than 60 words. The case of infrequent words. NMT systems outperform SMT systems on the translation of very infrequent words. And learning curves, NMT and SMT have very different learning curves. SMT is more robust in low resource conditions, less than 5 million words. Lexical gaps. NMT is more accurate in the case of lexical gaps, proves an improved use of word senses and reduces the post-editing effort. Words correlation. NMT systems understand similarities between words. SMT fails to correlate similar words and identify the correlation. Distance dependencies of words. NMT systems consider entire sentences and works well with words having long distance dependencies. SMT has a limited n-gram range. In essence, where SMT is limited on how many words its n-gram model dictates, NMT evaluates fluency of the entire sentence. Based on this comparison, the following challenges of NMT are highlighted. Quality estimation is one great challenge. If we make the most out of the feedback of our post editors, we will be able to create better quality metrics. Regarding the automation metrics, it may be interesting to calculate the successful patterns in order to identify the unsuccessful. High fluency of NMT may mask errors which are not easily identified by the post editors. The more the MT is evolved, the higher the expertise of the post editor needed. NMT is more accurate than SMT in the case of lexical gaps or unknown words not contained in the training corpus. And NMT can only work on a sentence-by-sentence basis on a micro-context and not on a macro-context basis. When the NMT system does something to one sentence, it does not know about the others. NMT will still struggle with more subtle translation decisions depending on the semantic ordering of adjunct prepositional phrases or on the focus of the negation, depending on the language combination. And NMT's performance out of domain is worse in almost all cases. And one more challenge is the human-computer interface. Document structure is more important for the linguist than the CAT tool or the MT system. Having analyzed the transition from the translation to the post-editing and from the SMT to the NMT, we can now check the impact of this transition on the translator role, which is gradually transforming into a post-editor role. The main factors supporting this transformation is the effort. According to Krings, there are three types of post-editing effort: temporal, cognitive, and technical. Technical effort consists of the changes made in the machine translation output to obtain the final version. Temporal effort refers to the time needed to post-edit a segment, to which we will refer as post-editing time. Cognitive effort is the actual effort needed to identify the errors and plan the necessary corrections during post-editing. The operation types are based on edit distance, which is a metric used to measure the difference between two sentences and which reflects the minimal number of deletions, insertions, and substitutions needed to transform one sentence into another. The operations include correcting word form, correcting word order, adding omission, deleting addition, and correcting lexical choice. All in all, the post-editing effort reflects the number of editing operations necessary to transform the empty output into the final version. Last, but most important, is the psychological effort. Post-editing contains the concept of the revision or review, and many are the linguists who are not keen on undertaking this kind of tasks, taking into account that post-editing requires the repetitive correction of the same trivial errors. Besides, it requires more effort on a cognitive level in relation with the pure human translation or the translation using CAT tools. Another thing to be noted here is that continuous post-editing from a psychological cognitive perspective affects the linguistic sense of the post-editor. As shown in the pyramid, the psychological effort is the basis for the cognitive, temporal, and technical effort. Now, what are the skills of the post-editor? Post-editor skills are tightly correlated to the concept of effort. Thus, post-editor profile should not be mixed with the translator or the reviewer profile. Post-editor skills include excellent editing skills and word processing experience, meaning full key proficiency, efficiency in cursor positioning, effective use of search and replace functions, and ability to work and make corrections directly on screen, which match the technical effort. Ability to always balance post-editing speed with respect to required quality, which reflects the temporal effort, and knowledge of source and target languages, expertise in the subject area, ability to adapt to different specifications required for each job, general knowledge of the problems and challenges faced by the MT, and specific knowledge of the weaknesses of the particular MT system which correspond to the cognitive effort. Last is the positive attitude to MT relevant for the psychological effort, without which nothing else can be done. To the question if the post-editor should be a junior or a senior linguist, we present the following results coming from various sources and research. There is a significant differentiation of cognitive effort between a junior and a senior linguist. Inexperienced translators have proved to treat the translation task as a mainly lexical task, whereas professional translators pay more attention to coherence and style. Junior translators require more time with higher number of fixations and pauses than professional translators while translating, meaning a higher post-editing effort whenever there is an increase of lexical grammar issues in the text. Experienced translators are faster post-editors and make more essential changes as well as preferential changes. Consequently, a lower post-editing effort. For experienced translators, the post-editing effort increases when there is an increase in coherence, meaning, or structural issues. These statements lead us to the conclusion that for light post-editing with statistical machine translation, a junior linguist is to be preferred. For full post-editing with neural machine translation, a senior linguist is to be preferred, which would also be a fair approach in terms of payment. Now, what is the impact of the post-editing on the translation profession? We have some positive and some negative aspects. The positive aspects are acquisition of knowledge and experience about the machine translation in general. They have the possibility to avoid repetitive tasks and translations. We have a new set of skills that can be developed and offered by the translators. And there is standardization of the terminology, leading to fewer inconsistencies. We have the possibility to automatically correct repetitive or predictable error patterns, and of course the fine-tuning of the machine translation engines over time, leading to better quality of the output. Post-editing could be used by translators in their favor as a productivity tool, and there is the possibility to combine post-editing with other activities to increase the overall productivity and job satisfaction. In the negative aspects, I have included the loss of linguistic sense for the post-editors, meaning that the more obvious application of the post-editing is that the linguist is continuously exposed to poor text in terms of linguistic quality, which may affect his or her judgment in order not to be able to understand the difference between what is linguistically valid and not valid. And the payment ambiguity, which is our standard reality. The prices for PEMT range from 40 to 85% of the full word rate, but there is no specific rule or standard for the calculation. Now, here we have some food for thought. To complete this presentation, and since most of us are members of the translation and localization industry, I would like to share the following questions for further thought and research with our community. Is post-editing an art or a science? Can translators be trained to be post-editors? Will post-editor role eliminate the translator role? Will the language quality deteriorate as a result of the mass production of post-edited texts? Is there the need of a system pre-assessing MT suitability by predicting post-editing effort? And can machine translation quality be improved from the point of view of post-editing process? We can discuss some of these or more questions during the Q&A session which will follow, but also please feel free to email me and share your thoughts with me. In case you are interested in more language-specific information regarding post-editing, you can follow the link for an introduction by Taos. It covers various languages. And I also offer you a useful link for those of you who would like to attend a course on post-editing and put yourself, let's say, in the gloves of the post-editor. Now, there is another slide. You may also want to look at some references for deep reading and understanding of what was discussed today, and these were the references the presentation was based on. So here is my contact information, and feel free to contact me for any discussion or question you may have and will not be covered here. And thank you very much for attending this presentation.
Thank you, Fivita, for this awesome presentation. The floor is open for questions from the audience. We have a few already, so let me start with one here that I think fits in well with the food for thought category, and that is, would you say that post-editing is a job replacing translators or a tool for translators?
Yes, these are the gray areas that we have to define based on the research that have been done so far. So post-editing for me is a skill, is a service, and is a role, and it should be approached from all these perspectives. The truth is that it is not defined, and there is no clear explanation of if we have a transition from a translation to post-editing, or if translation is something separate and post-editing is something separate. I think that we are in the transition stage that both will happen. Right now, we have the transition because we already have translators going to post-editing role. But in the next years, we will train from the beginning post-editors. Like in the presentation of FDL, they said that in the next years they will recruit post-editors. So this will be the future. And we will also have translators for specific kind of text. This is what I see ahead.
Cool. Thank you. We have a few specific questions as well. So one of our audience members is wondering, if the best tool is a Word file with the empty output, then how do you know if there are omissions or additions? Or how do you make sure the labels are the right ones? So I think this question is really about how do you work with Word and empty output?
How do we work with Word and empty output?
Yeah.
Okay, this is not ideal. I described in the presentation the ideal tool. But as a linguist, I can say that for me, I'm going to have a better quality if I work in a Word file with an empty output, just like with track changes, because I see the images and all the information given by the formatting of the text, than using the cut tool and working in that interface where I don't have access to this information, and what I have to do is to finish the post-editing, then open the file in a different formatting, in the final formatting of a Word, a PDF, whatever, and make the final check, go back and implement the corrections. So I see that the ideal does not exist right now, but for sure the linguist would more like to work in a word structure than use a cut tool in terms of quality, not in terms of speed. In terms of speed, the CAT tool is always best.
Cool, thank you. And then we have another question here. What is the typical daily output for full post editing? You mentioned 20K words for light, but you didn't mention full. Do you have any number for that?
It's tricky. That's why I didn't mention it. It depends on the language combination. So whatever I said, it would produce confusion, because for Chinese it's something different, for Greek something different, for German something different, and it depends on the research. So we estimate that normally it can be up to 10,000 words if the post editor has an expertise. For example, if you work all the time with the same customer, then you know the errors of the machine translation system, you are going to be faster. But in the opposite, you may have a productivity of, let's say, like 20% more than the translation and reach, let's say, 3,500 to 4,000 words. So everything is not very clear there. And one more thing I would like to say, I don't remember now. Anyway, okay, that's it.
Okay. One person here would like a recommendation for an MMT solution in terms of overall language quality for technical prose or technical text. Not sure that you have one, but what would be your recommendation for an NMT system?
To recommend an NMT system? I think that this can be discussed via email. I don't have an answer right now.
Yeah, that's good. That's perfectly fine. You know, we don't expect you to actually have one. As regards the best person to be a post editor, can a junior linguist learn post editing from scratch? Is that actually advisable and possible?
Yes, this will be the future, I think. We will recruit post editors and we will have a specific post editor profile. And it's not that I don't expect yet the universities to have this as a course, let's say, but since people know the techniques of the translation and they practice, they will be able to become post editors and be recruited as such with the specific skills. So I think there will be more courses in the future, and that there will be a different direction. Some of them, they will go for post editing and some for translation, but they are opposite roles. I mean, it's not the same. The skills are really different, and it should not be confused.
Okay, thank you. Given or taking into account all that you have talked about today, would you think that statistical machine translation is over and done with, and replaced by the better NMT systems, or is there still a place for statistical machine translation?
Since we talk about the industry and we talk about profits and productivity, one cannot exclude the other, because statistical machine translation works very well with specific let's say, roles, like, for example, with juniors, the statistical translation works better. With seniors, the neural machine translation works better. So if we combine both, or if we choose one of them for specific cases, then both are in the game. They cannot be excluded. And one cannot replace the other.
Yeah. Thank you for that perspective. We got another crystal ball question here, namely, do you think that translation memories will disappear given that trained NMT output may render higher quality translations? Or
I didn't understand the question.
Do you think that translation memories will disappear, or because they're essentially getting beaten out by trained NMT systems that provide higher quality translations, or do you think that there will continue to be a place for TMs?
TMs cannot disappear because they are created by humans, and as long as the CAT tools exist, they cannot disappear. However, what happens recently is that we try to combine translation memories with machine translation system, and the trend is to train the machine translation systems, taking into account the human results from the translation memories. So the more they are trained in between, the better the results. But translation memories cannot disappear. It is the base. It is like a database where you save everything. This will still exist in this sense.
Okay. Going back to the distinction between junior and senior linguist, one person is wondering if a senior linguist wouldn't correct too much or concentrate too much on the errors that they find in a text because they're senior and better versed.
That's why we differentiated the junior linguist with a statistical MT, because the errors differ. So in the statistical MT, which is a phrase-based system, we have one by one, and the translation is one by one. It is based in phrases. Then the junior linguist will be more it will be more easier for him or her to go and correct the obvious errors, while NMT is more complex because it simulates the brain structure. So it's going to be more difficult to identify the errors. They are masked. I think that the junior is going to be fine if the skills are well developed. It depends on the skills and on the training of a junior linguist who starts. And of course, I recommended that a junior linguist should go better with the light post-editing, and a senior would go better with the full post-editing in order to avoid this kind of errors and to have a fair system of payment.
Thank you for that. We're coming to the end of the questions that we have, so let's maybe end with one of those larger issues that you raised at the end of your presentation, and that is, do you believe that machine translation is going to fully replace the role of the translator and will only leave post-editors behind? What's your personal perspective?
No, machine translation cannot eliminate translators, but unless it evolves that much, because the more it evolves, the more it requires more skills from the post-editor, and at some level, at the highest level, you cannot have a post-editor. I mean, if you have one error in 10 pages, but this error is critical, then you certainly need a reviewer and not a post-editor to unmask the error. So translator is something else, and they're going to be used for marketing texts unless there is a great development and a great evolution in the machine translation system. But post-editing is going to be the trend of the future, and it's going to work very well with commercial documentation, technical documentation, even legal documents. And we will see how it goes.
Cool. Thank you so much for that perspective, and thank you to the audience for all of those great questions and for the great discussion. I think it's just about all the time that we have today, but if you're left with any unanswered questions, you can enter them into the survey that you will receive after you log off, or you can ask Viveta directly. So Viveta, thank you again for joining us today and for presenting on this topic. And another big thank you to all of our participants for joining us. We would really appreciate it if you could take just a minute to give us your feedback on today's sessions using the post-event survey. It is short, but your perspectives help us to continue to refine our webinar program. And with that, I wish you all a good day or a good night, depending on where you are, and I look forward to seeing you at another GALA webinar soon. Bye-bye.